There's one RPG guy over here. Oh!
Ow.
Kill us all!
That hurt.
Helldivers 2 is a game about teamwork. It's a game about friendship. It's a game about tripling the defense budget, where you and your squad spread managed democracy across the galaxy and waste those who would threaten Super Earth's liberty. This is how Helldivers 2 is marketed, with it emphasizing these themes of teamwork and cooperation. But when you play the game, especially at high difficulties, you soon realize that this isn't quite the case. Sure, you and your squad are working together to achieve a common goal, but you're rarely ever working together as the marketing would imply. Because yes, being left alone halfway across the map is what I call teamwork. This dissonance in the design of Helldivers 2 is quite fascinating, because it's obvious that Arrowhead was aiming to create the aesthetic of teamwork, to design their game to promote coordination between players. However, certain design decisions have instead created the opposite, encouraging players to be independent from their teams. And it's this unique quirk in the design that I want to explore further, to figure out where and why this conflict in design is occurring. Buddy mechanics are mechanisms present in Helldivers 2 which are designed primarily to encourage teamwork through aspects of the game's design, because they require cooperation between two players. However, it's no secret that these mechanisms haven't been very successful due to poor design cohesion and implementation. The assisted reload is one such mechanic. As the name implies, it allows players to assist team members with reloading certain support weapons. However, I wouldn't blame people for not knowing it even existed, for it's about as useful as those anti-tank mines. But there's a reason for this, because the mechanic is not designed for Helldivers 2. As players would know, this mechanic is ripped straight from the first game. However, the assisted reload didn't change much with the sequel. Clearly Arrowhead spent way too much time huffing down those rare samples because they implemented the assisted reload under the assumption that Helldivers 2 was being played just like Helldivers 1, which it's not. Helldivers 2 as an experience is far more open and free, with players being able to go and do what they wish because the camera is no longer cramming players into a small box on the screen. This in turn creates a dissonance in the cohesion between this mechanic and the design goal of Helldivers 2, because players must go out of their way to track down a team member, take their ammo pack, sacrifice a fourth of the team's total firepower, and significantly reduce the mobility of half the team just to get a faster reload speed. The assisted reload of Helldivers 2 is supposed to promote teamwork, but its design clashes with this overall design of the game, which in turn banishes this mechanic into the realm of uselessness. As designers, we want our mechanisms to work in harmony with the design of the game, because unintended conflict will lead to a noticeably less cohesive gaming experience for the player. For a mechanic designed to work in one game will not always translate to another. If I was to give Arrowhead some suggestions, for the love of Super Earth, remove this backwards switcheroo nonsense with the backpack. Allow players to simply run up and assist with the reload without having to make a backpack switch. This mechanic shouldn't be a meta-defining strategy, but it should be a viable choice in certain circumstances, which is currently not the case. The change to a third-person camera model from a top-down camera model is quite significant when it comes to this conflict in Helldivers 2's design, because it literally changes how us, the players, interact with the game world. This change in perspective also adjusts how designers go about constructing aesthetics for the game, with them having to account for how the camera model will influence the game world. Now, I've already gone into greater detail about how camera perspectives affect game design in a previous video, but to summarize it, game photography is a crucial part of game design, for the camera model dictates how players see the game world, and how they interact with it. It changes gameplay, and how designers construct their experiences for players. What the hell was that? The major difference between Helldivers 1 and 2 is that the camera in Helldivers 1 reinforces unity through the camera's implementation. The borders of the top-down perspective are used as a boundary for players, forcing them to stick together in a small space. This helps strengthen the aesthetic of teamwork in the game, for players must work together whether they like it or not. Whereas for Helldivers 2, there's no such restriction in its camera design.
I feel very proud of that.
Who said that? The players are free to do what they want, go where they want, and waste all the reinforcements they want. There is no obligation in the camera's design for players to stick together. There is nothing in the construction of the camera that reinforces or encourages teamwork. Quick note, this isn't a bad thing, just an area that contributes to Helldivers 2's design dissonance. For the change in perspective is sort of like the catalyst to this whole thing. I've said before that the golden rule for good gameatography is that if the camera doesn't help the player, then design one that does. In this case, the camera doesn't help the designers of Helldivers 2 to achieve the aesthetic of teamwork, with the third-person perspective promoting a stronger sense of independence than coordination. Yet another point of unintended dissonance between an aesthetic and the design. But that's how it goes when you change the camera.
There's some pros, some cons. They're different types of game experiences.
Who let Saga Baroshi back into the studio? Now, I don't need to tell you that completing mission objectives is a fundamental aspect of Helldivers 2's design, for it's how us players get those elusive medals. And I always enjoy it when Arrowhead adds a new objective type into the game, because it's usually quite creative and fun. Well, when it's not completely broken, that is. But the mission objectives are always very simple to understand. Go to X, complete Y, do that a few times, then finish the mission. Easy. However, the overall design of these missions is another area that fails to encourage teamwork in Helldivers 2, with players benefiting more if they were to split up and go it alone than if they were to stay together. This conflict is mainly caused by two things: the time limit and the lack of a buddy mechanic. As I mentioned before, a typical mission has many parts to it, which are spread out across the game world. But there are also a handful of secondary objectives and places of interest scattered throughout the mission, which creates a hefty list of things players need to complete or explore before leaving. Couple this with a time limit, and all of a sudden, a pressure is placed on the player to pick up the pace. Now, don't get me wrong, 40 minutes is a very generous amount of time, but accounting for everything I've just said, plus all the fighting players will be doing along the way, and that 40 minutes disappears real quick. That's why knowing how to avoid a fight separates the experienced from the shinies. But even if your team sticks together and plays the game how the marketing implies it should be, there isn't any benefit gained from multiple team members being present in one location. There isn't a buddy mechanic established to reinforce this kind of cooperative behavior. No passive boost to progression speed, no other object to interact with that positively impacts the current objective. The current design philosophy behind missions has too many factors incentivizing player independence, encouraging teams to split up and work alone to cover ground more efficiently. The lack of benefits and the pressure of the time limit pushes players apart, which reinforces this design dissonance we find in Helldivers 2. So, with all the points laid out, where and why is this design dissonance occurring? Well, Helldivers 2 is marketed as a co-op game, a game that is supposed to be reinforcing the aesthetic of teamwork. But the design of certain mechanics and systems has shaped Helldivers 2 into a different experience. There are features like the buddy mechanics, which are designed to encourage teamwork amongst players, but fail due to not being tailored for the experience that Helldivers 2 creates. We've also got the drastic evolution of the camera camera model, which brings fundamental changes to Helldivers 2 at a design level. For the third-person perspective, at its core, brings a sense of independence which contrasts the intended aesthetic. And the overall design of the missions in the game don't have the necessary components to cultivate the behavior we see Arrowhead market to players. Now, if I didn't make myself clear before, this dissonance in design isn't this game-killing problem. It's not going to send Helldivers 2 to an early grave. No, the game-breaking bugs will do that first. But I believe this level of freedom that Helldivers 2 gives players is a great thing. It allows players like myself to run off and do the things we need to do. If my team is being stupid, I can leave them without the game punishing me for actually having a brain. So I don't want anybody getting the idea that this quirk in the design is this game-killing problem. It's just simply not the case. But if Arrowhead wants the game to better reflect what their marketing implies, then they will have to address and adjust certain areas of Helldivers 2. Because as an experience, Helldivers 2 is very open and free, encouraging the growth of independence in us Helldivers. But those are my thoughts on the matter. But I'd like to hear what you folks have to say about this. Is there something I missed or a topic I could have gone into more detail about? Make sure to leave it in the comments below. You definitely did that last time, holy shit. But that's all from me. Take care, and I'll see you, well, whenever I see you again. Or, well, whenever you see me again, because I can't see through the screen. If you enjoyed this video, then I implore you to subscribe and check out the other videos as well that I've made on Helldivers 2, because, views, money.